Right, hi, this is a quick video on how to use basic manual settings on your camera. I will share the screen and we will go through that now. So what happens is these are just the basics. There's a lot more complicated things you could do, but what we're doing instead is just showing you some of the basics. So what happens is manual photography. It's all about how to use the manual settings rather than the automatic settings on your camera. By using the manual settings, you can do all these amazing things that just don't happen on automatic settings. So what happens is this is a long exposure shot. You can see the trails of the lights of the car. It's dark but at nighttime, but you can see by having a long exposure that all the lights of the building is coming on. There's a bit of light in the sky. You cannot get that in automatic settings. So this is the reason that we use manual. Now, on automatic settings, the camera uses its brain. In manual settings, you have to use your brain. So here we go. We're going to explain everything on the camera like it is an eyeball, because basically when they came around to making a camera and they said this film stuff and go, what the heck do we do? They just made a mechanical eyeball. So most of us has done this in science, where you have we've learned how the eyeball works through the magic optics. You have an image here, it gets inverted as it goes through the lens, and then it is at the back. So we have a lens at the front. You have that on a camera. You have a pupil, which is the hole on your eyeball. And in a camera, it's called an aperture. And then at the back, you have the nerves, which pick up all the light and send it off to the brain. And in a camera, you have the digital plate. In the old days, they had film. Right, so lots of things I'm going to be explaining like it is an eyeball, all the functions, and it'll make a little bit more sense. Okay, so first thing we do is we put it on manual settings at the top of your camera. And when you put it on manual settings, you will see it looks like this. It will look like this at the back, and you have to do all these things. And I'll show you how those, and we work from the right to the left, and I'll show you the first one. The first one we do is a thing called white balance. White balance is working out, because the camera will do it automatically in auto, but on manual, you have to do it yourself. You work out what kind of light you're in, because fluorescent light, it will come out blue. Tungsten light, which is yellow light, will come out yellow, and vice versa for in the shadows, cloudy, and all those kind of things. So you have to tell it what it is. Otherwise, your photos will come out a strange color and you won't know why. So you push the WB, white balance, and you dial up using the side buttons here, left and right, and you dial up what it actually is. That's step one. Step two is a thing called ISO. On some cameras, it's called ASA, same thing. And so what happens is we do have to work out this. This is the sensitivity of the plate at the back, or if you want to think about the eyeball, how sensitive the nerves are at the back of the eyeball, okay? How we do that is we push the ISO button and it comes up with the screen, and we click left and right to dial up the ISO. Now, how ISO is described? It's described in numbers. 100 is very fine detail, but it's very slow, and it goes all the way through, depending on your camera, up to 6,400. So this is fine detail down here. This is grainy detail. This is how sensitive the plate is. So this happens very fast. So they're very big pixels, and it looks grainy because of that. These ones are very tiny pixels, very sensitive. So you get all this fine detail, but it happens very slowly, and you have everything in between. All right. So traditionally, this 100 is used for portraits. That's how they get those portraits looking amazing. And sports photography, when things have to happen fast, this is the 6,000 very fast ISO, it's called, is used down here. So what happens is you have to work out what you're taking photos of. Is my person sitting down and I'm going to get a fine detailed picture? Or if they're moving, I'm going to have something a lot slower, a lot faster, and vice versa. If it's very dark, you're going to have this, because if it's very slow, it's going to take a long time and I'll need a lot more lights, and that's where you do studio lighting and you put all those things in. Okay, step three. So next one along. Step 3 is called the f-stop, and that's your aperture. So that is the hole in your lens. So in an eyeball, it is the pupil, how big that hole is. And in the camera, it is called an aperture or f-stop. So how you change the f-stop is you hold down the AV button and then you do the dial at the top here. All right, so that's how you change your f-stop. What f-stop is described as is these numbers. So f-stop 5, and it goes all the way through to f-stop 32. It is counterintuitive that the lower numbers, the smaller numbers, are the bigger hole, right? So it's a bigger hole. You can imagine that like your eyeball, that it lets in more light, right? That's your pupil, lets in more light, so you can see better. And if it's so there'd be like a very dark day. On a very bright day, it'll be a small hole, and that's f-stop 32. So you can say, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to have lots of light coming in all the time. My pictures will come out great. But this is what the F stands for. The F stands for focus. So what happens is you have on an f-stop 5.0, you only have a few things in focus. So if imagine this is a camera, 3 people standing in a row, you will only have this person to focus, this person will be out of focus, and this person will be out of focus as well, which you might want. So you have all these people out of focus, and that might look awesome. But if you have it at f-stop 32, then everyone will be in focus. But as you can imagine, this is a small little hole, so not much light will come through. These all things all start affecting each other. So that's that step where you are working out what you want to focus and how much light it is. If it's dark, you're going to have a big hole anyway. Or if it's light, a small one you can get away with. Step 4 is the shutter speed. So we're thinking about this as the blinking. So the blinking is the whole thing of the shutter speed, and it's how long that aperture is open for, how long that pupil is open for. All right. So how you change that is you adjust the dial this time, and it will change that number. Now that number is described as fractions of a second. It goes lower than this, but I just put this on here, 1/4 of a second, all the way through up to this magical point, which is 125th of a second, and it goes all the way up, depending on the camera, up to 4,000th of a second. Okay, so you can imagine this is very slow because these are fractions of seconds. This is incredibly fast. So what happens is anything slower than 125th of a second, you're going to get camera shake if you're holding it in your hands, because your breathing is always going, your heartbeat is always going, and quite literally it will move just a little bit and your pictures will come out blurry just because the camera's moving. If you go slower than this, you need a tripod, so that way you're not holding it in your hands. If you're going faster than this, then it's great. You can hold it in your hands because quite literally the shot is happening in 1/500th of a second, and it's happening in between your heartbeats. So that's what we do with shutter speed. This is slow, this is fast. Okay, now to work out what kind of shutter speed you need to use the last little piece. These things are together, this is a together step, because you need to use your light meter. And this light meter is down here. 0 is perfect, like the Goldilocks, just right, not too hot, not too cold. And in this case, it's not too dark, that's the negative, and not too light, that's the positive, too much light or too little light. How we do that is you half press it down on the shutter release button. That's the button up the front here to take the photo. Half press it down, and this tiny little white square will come up, and then you dial up your shutter speed to get it onto the 0. So it won't always be on the 0, it'll be off to one side or the other. You dial up your shutter speed to get it down onto here. Now, you're going to have to probably go back and change things depending upon what your light meter is saying. You can see here the shutter speed to get it onto the 0 is incredibly slow. So you're going to have it on a tripod. And if someone's moving, it's going to be moving. So you go, oh, I don't want my shutter speed to be that slow. So I've already got my aperture of a very big hole. And then, so therefore I'll have to speed up my ISO so I let more light in. So it goes faster. So all these things all interact with each other, and you have to change some of them. And so you start going back over and speeding up your ISO, making this bigger if you need to, more light, so smaller number, or you'll have to make your shutter speed be faster if that's what you need, all to get this onto the 0. So the whole idea is those are all the things that we're doing. It's great that you take this out on your little phone. So as you're taking photos, you can have a look and see what you're doing wrong, because you will have white photos that all just burnt out like a nuclear explosion. You'll have black photos all too dark, and you go, what the heck did I do wrong? You go back and you go, oh, that's it. And that's why these videos are great. You can pause, rewind, and that's it. Goodbye.